welcome, Phillip. It's absolutely wonderful to have a chance to interview you and explore a little bit about your fantastic career. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your role is at the moment?
Sure, thank you. And good morning to you. So my name is Phillip Wale, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of WH Ireland, which is a combined wealth management and broking business.
Brilliant. And I know you've got experience of being a CEO in a number of companies. How did you become the CEO of WH Ireland?
Yeah, so this is my fourth time of being a CEO. And prior to this, I was the CEO of a company that actually had WH Ireland as one of its clients. So that's how I was aware of the business. And then the shareholders of WH Ireland asked me if I would take over once my role at the previous firm had ended.
Fantastic. And how long have you been with WH Ireland now?
This is 6 years now in July.
Brilliant. 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 So tell us a little bit about the business and what the company does.
Sure. So it started life 150 years ago as a traditional stockbroking business based in Manchester. And as it's evolved and matured, it's become a full service wealth planning and wealth management service, a two-tier business. And the other side of the business is the capital markets division, which looks after corporate clients specializing in UK growth firms.
Brilliant. Excellent. And it was interesting. We had a previous discussion about role of a CEO. What sort of things do you think is key to being a successful CEO?
Let me just refocus. I just got distracted by something. Sorry.
No problem. So I was just asking about if you tell us a little bit about what do you think is the key things to be as successful as being a CEO of a company like yours?
Yeah, I think the key is to have a strong plan. So when you come in a role as a CEO, the people you inherit and the business you inherit will be looking for guidance and challenge. And therefore, it's very important to have a strong plan for taking the business forward. And if you're going to have that strong plan, you need to communicate it. Most importantly, in my experience, you need to make the first 90 days really count. And then after that, I think delegation is key. You've got to have the right people to delegate to. And if you haven't, then you need to change them, either from within or from outside. And then as you evolve into the role, you just keep repeating the above, sticking to the plan, making sure you continue to communicate, complete review of the plan and where you are on the chart. Is it going according to plan? And as I say, with delegation, continue to do that to the right people, make them part of the process and owners of the business. And if it's not working out, be prepared to change it.
Brilliant. Yeah. We talk about this a lot when we spoke about 90-day planning. We love the 90-day planning cycles because, a year can be a long time in business. So what would you say is your biggest lessons since you've been in the role? What lessons would you share with others?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think the one word would be listen. So whenever I've taken over a CEO role, I've met every employee one-to-one, and that includes at all levels within the firm. And I think when you do that and you listen, you'll learn their frustrations, their ambitions. You get a lot of innovation from them. After all companies' assets are its people. And however strong a manufactured product or the offering to clients is, it's going to be the people that deliver it and will be sculptured by them, and the culture and morale and their ownership of the whole business, if you like, that will make it successful. So I think a combination of those things. It's all very well having a very strong plan, but people have to agree with it, share your passion, understand why it's the right thing. And if it's not the right thing, you have to be prepared to be challenged, and you have to bring them along with you.
Brilliant. Yeah. And was that really interesting? I mean, you would have obviously had maybe different opinions, different perspectives, different levels. And was it quite revealing when you went and spoke to all these different staff about the company?
Generally. Yeah, it really was. In the case of WH Ireland, we had a number of regional offices, and some of those regional offices have been acquired along the way. So with them, they may have had their own individual culture. And one of the things that is quite important is to have a sort of centralized culture, not necessarily trying to repeat everything everywhere, but to have a central theme so that, any customer of the firm would understand what the firm's drivers are, what the service level is, and it should be consistent across every port of call that the firm's trying to deliver it. What was particularly interesting with ours is perhaps the way technology, for instance, have been absorbed within each different branch. We've now got that to a level where everyone is using the same technology and using it in the same configured manner, so to the benefit of our clients, and also for the people. In some areas, I don't think people understood how the firm was doing at group level, so we changed that by having regular communications.
Brilliant, excellent. Is there a typical day in the life of a CEO for you, or what was your routine? Do you have a routine?
To some extent, I mean, one sets up, weekly or monthly meetings or quarterly, calls amongst the whole firm. But I think from a daily point of view, you've got to review where you are on this chart, as I like to call it, or plan, that has an end goal. And whatever that end goal is, I think you have to constantly review where you are. If you think of all the different parts of the firms as, vessels traveling on that chart, you've got to make sure that if some are going ahead of the others, can you help the others to catch up? Do you need to slow some down? And are people being left behind, for the wrong reasons? The other thing I really feel very strongly as a CEO or as any business leader, desk head, department head, is to have an open door policy. And that means you just got to thoroughly encourage people to talk to you all the time. And if you feel they're not doing it, literally drag them through that open door and listen to what they're saying and react accordingly.
It's really interesting that, because the open door policy, a lot of leaders say it, but when everybody comes through the door, they're always too busy to speak to them. How do you balance that people, maybe keep interrupting you with things?
Sure. Actually, in two ways, because every time I've become a CEO, the first thing I've done is rip down any office with the word CEO written on the door and have an open plan environment. Now, of course, that can work against you because people will see you're not on the phone and they will walk up to you. Every establishment has the ability to go into a private meeting room, or should have, or somewhere where you can have a private meeting. But in general, if people see there aren't barriers to approaching you, and the more approachable you are as a person, then I think you can get a healthy respect between, being constantly, battered with questions or requests, and at the same time, not pushing people away so that you don't hear what they really want to say. So there's a balance. But I very much don't like the idea of a sort of glass office style environment where people may be intimidated by the idea of asking for your time. I think they can politely come up and say, I've got something to run by you, and it should be for the good of them and the firm.
No, it's really interesting. It's really interesting because a lot of people have, as I said, they call it the modern trend of being in open plan. And some people think, oh, it's only a trend. It's a waste of time. We just need our own office. And other people like yourself think there is actually value in that. So when it comes to having meetings then, or you need to speak privately, would you just book a room, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have, we have a number of meeting rooms in each office. A lot of them are used for when clients come in. But there are enough, or it's adequate, that you can always go away if you need to have a private conversation. There are certain areas of the firm where, because of confidentiality, for instance, corporate finance or the HR department or something, that always have constant confidential meeting rooms. So there's plenty of places to do that. I'm also quite a fan of, it doesn't have to be in the office. If people want to have a quiet chat, there's plenty of places you can do that. Local coffee house, do whatever you like. I just think it's that's probably the easier part, finding the venue. I think when you start to isolate yourself, a different floor or different environment, then you're not encouraging people to want to talk in the first place.
Yeah, that is so interesting, because I go to offices and some of the larger organizations, and there can be a sort of a senior management floor where nobody goes there unless you've got an appointment. And how do staff ever dare to go to that floor, because it's so imposing? So it's really interesting. That open culture is really interesting.
I inherited exactly that, and I have done in my last 3 firms acting as CEO, and in each case I used the same policy in that we may have kept the CEO office and turned it into a meeting room, but generally I sit out with the troops, and you stop that image. And I understand exactly what you're saying, and certainly if it's then migrated to a different floor, you really are alienating yourself from the engine room, so to speak.
Yeah. How did the other directors feel about it? Did you get them to go and sit with the others as well?
Yeah, so you get a mixed response, in general, I would say people have embraced it and understand the benefits of it more so than those felt it was imposing on what they deemed to be a necessary privacy. Of course, in some areas, as I've said, there's always the need to be able to work in an isolated function or within a team that's doing something confidential or specifically designed for one particular client. But you know, those things are quite easy in a modern environment, and I think the open door policy for everyone has been well received.
Brilliant. How do you see the next 5 years? Is that too long to think about, or do you sort of think about where's the business going to be in 5 years' time?
Sure. So, I mean, particularly in the wealth management business now, one has to continue to expand, and you either do that by becoming a consolidator and adding assets through acquiring teams or indeed whole businesses, or you become consolidated yourself as part of a bigger organization. And I think that is just the way market conditions have dictated what happens in wealth management. So for the next 5 years for us, one imagines that there must be a pattern to grow assets under management. And organically is probably too slow in the world we live in. You probably have to look at doing so but through some kind of deal.
Right. Okay. So maybe expansion through working with another consolidation or whatever. Interesting. Do you have anybody that you particularly admire in business? Anybody you think maybe not the word role model, but people you think they're pretty inspiring?
I've always thought Warren Buffett was particularly inspiring because if you look at and there's many books about him and ones he's written himself, but you know it's a very simplistic and consistent approach he's had to business over decades of success, and what he's created is almost an unsurpassed company culture and the rules surrounding it. And even he, although he's very strict about what he does and doesn't invest in, over the years has embraced change. So he was a long time getting into technology and a long time getting into other sectors. But despite the fact that he effectively runs a company that's still one of the 10 largest in the world through investing is a measurement of success. And his people never leave. Everyone who works for that firm work there for their whole lives.
Yeah, which says something about him, doesn't it? I mean, he is almost an enigma, isn't he? He's an amazing character, very, as you said, very unimposing, very simple guy, lives in the same house.
That's right. Yeah.
Eccentric, even you could describe him as, given the wealth that he has. I'm sure he has maybe a few private planes, or must have something that's a little bit expensive, I suppose.
I think you'll find probably not. You're absolutely right. He does apparently live in the same house he bought in the 60s. And I think until very recently, he even drove the same car, which he'd had for like 30 years. I'm sure he has his extravagances like we all do. But I think where it comes down to the culture he's built around the workplace, that has remained the same. I mean, it's almost like a family-run thing and obviously enormously successful. And the rules around his basics for investing and supporting companies over the decades he have stayed the same, and they've been extremely successful.
Very successful. I always remember him saying, if the market gets excited about something, he gets nervous, and if the market's not talking about something, he wants to be in there early. He doesn't like it when people get, if the market's saying everybody's got to buy this, you're probably too late and maybe buying it at the wrong time. So it's quite interesting, as you said. He keeps it pretty simple. He kept away from also sort of crypto and some of those sort of new things as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, he's had a cautious outlook for complex derivatives, certainly crypto stuff like that. You're right, he's been a contrarian. I mean, he's certainly one of the people brave enough to step into markets that suddenly move rapidly one way or another and do the opposite, because it's usually the right thing to do if you can be brave enough to weather the storm, so to speak. So yeah, he has, and I mean that's obviously been a big measure of success. It hasn't been a case of sudden enormous profits and then a quiet period. I mean, there's just been a consistent outperformance there over many years.
Yeah, certainly has. Absolutely. Do you have any particular views about AI and how it might impact your business?
Well, it's very hard to tell in our business, and it's very much a person client facing business. But the obvious answer would be AI must have some effect on our business. If we look at things where we offer bespoke portfolio modeling and such like that, I think that's still a very personal thing. The idea of certainly some of our, I mean, the demographic of our wealth management clients are generally older people, in retirement or close to retirement. And I think they've always really valued the personal service offered by our investment managers and our wealth planners. Obviously, any kind of customer service will be enhanced through AI and any other automation when we all use it, the technology we're using now.
Yeah.
After COVID, Zoom became a huge part of how we communicate with some of our oldest clients, and they now prefer it that way, having always been visitors to the branch. So for us, it's hard to tell, but one of the things that absolutely must change, but I'm not sure how.
Oh, I thought your camera went off for a sec there. Yeah, so that's really interesting. And it is always interesting how we used to look at like what could be a COVID proof. We used to talk about an internet proof business, then we talked about a COVID proof business, and it's quite interesting, as you said. When we spoke, you mentioned that how many people would be happy if you said you want to have a meeting with your wealth manager, and we said just log onto this bot and just talk to the computer, and it will give you any answer you're looking for. It won't go down too well. So the personal side of it is still a key feature of what you do.
It is for us, because I think that's probably the key way to lose clients. I mean, we some firms have a certain level of minimum investment, which is very high before you can get a bespoke service or a senior manager. We try not to do that. We just make sure our managers aren't overloaded with too many clients so they can offer them the same service. But I think when you start to sort of dictate how someone wants to be treated, if it's different from how they've been treated before, then it's probably it's like if a shop stops selling your favorite food, you probably won't go there anymore. So I think it's key to listen to what they like and continue to offer it if you still can, and the economics work for the firm and for the client. So I don't see anytime soon there being a big pickup in me saying to people, you no longer need to come into our Manchester office and meet your manager. We're going to have a bot answer your
Send you a
question
link
and redesign your portfolio. I'm not sure that would work for us.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. My mum, she's passed away, but my mum used to get her blood pressure used to go up when people said you can just go on the internet. When she used to ring people, used to put her blood pressure up. She said, "I'm speaking to you now. I want to answer from you. Can you not help me?" It's quite interesting that, as you said, technology can help us, but you got to remember there's still the human element, isn't it?
Well, we still have receptionists and switchboard, because we don't believe people want to listen to multiple options on an electronic system, when really all they've done is phoned up to speak to their wealth planner or their wealth manager, or indeed on the corporate side to one of their corporate financiers to ask for advice. So we try and make sure that it's always a person-to-person business.
Yeah, interesting, brilliant. We also mentioned you had some really interesting books and stuff that you've read over time. Any books you would recommend to anybody in terms of from a business point of view or from just an interest point of view?
Yeah, so the last business book that I finished this year was called Pyramid of Lies by Duncan Mavin, which is about the Greens Hill Capital episode, which is just really interesting reading, because obviously it has links to what was happening politically at the time and everything else. So that's a great book. In terms of politics, this year I read Rory Stewart's book, Politics on the Edge, which again is a fascinating insight into someone who entered politics at quite a young age, and around a time of extreme change, because he was part of the short reign of Liz Truss, etc. And then outside of business, I love historical books. I've just finished The Wager by David Grattan, which is about one of the men of war ships that followed the days of galleons in the early part of the British Empire, which is a fascinating and true story.
Fascinating. Do you prefer hard books or do you do audios?
I would love to say I only read paperbacks and hardback books, but I just don't have the time. So I populate an awful lot of my reading time by listening to Audible books, which is something I took a while to convert to. But if you do it in the right environment, either commuting or even quiet times at home, I actually find it now really works for me, and I get to read a lot more than I would do otherwise.
Yeah, 100%. I was like that as well. Always loved the physical, but then when time's pressured, as you said, it's brilliant. I'm in the gym. I've had some of the greatest ideas when I'm in the gym. I've had to stop and send myself a note because I thought it was a fantastic little nugget I've just learned. But
The other
as you
thing is
said,
And it changes your travel, because you suddenly, if you're desperately trying to make that 23 kilogram weight limit on a holiday, it makes life a lot easier if you haven't got 5 paper bags stuffed in there. So.
They are a bit heavy. That is a factor when you're traveling. They are a bit heavy. That's true. Makes it much easier for sure. So, interesting. So, from in your opinion, why do you think most businesses fail? The failure rate in business, people talk about 80% of businesses don't get 5 years. What what is it that goes so wrong?
Sure. I think one is over ambition. I think if a business starts successfully, it's almost or more successfully than you even anticipate. It can actually be one of the worst things, because people then become over ambitious, and I feel almost invincible, and that can lead them, very quickly into, whatever field you're doing, a track where you may have oversupplied with the wrong stock, or invested in the wrong people, or spent the money too quickly. I think the other is lack of resource. I mean, again, as you start to develop a business, or repair a business, if you do so knowingly not having the resource to make it effective, it's very dangerous. And by that, you might have to invest in people that, or technology that isn't going to repay you for some time, but it's essential.
Sure.
I think the third one, I touched on it earlier, is the quality of the people and the product. And I say they're the same and different. The quality of the people is absolutely essential, as is the culture. And if you've got a good product, that's great too. But if you've got good people making that product, it can only help you, be better. And if for some reason it's lacking, then I think you need to really address that, because that's another way businesses get finished. And the last one, because it's linked to this, is ignoring the competition. I mean, even if you're doing very well, if somebody suddenly starts doing the same thing better or cheaper, you're only going one way unless you change.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There's some examples of this in the modern technology examples, isn't it, where companies seem to just totally ignore the way the world was changing, or totally ignore the opportunity that they could have grabbed as well, like Dyson and wheels on suitcases and all this sort of technology, isn't it? Netflix, and people didn't see it coming. What would you say is the biggest challenge in your industry right now?
So particularly for our industry, it's probably regulation. So for all very good reasons, regulation has become much stiffer. It's protecting the end client, whether that's an institution, a corporation, or more importantly, a retail client. So regulation has become a lot more fierce. Some firms have to make sure that they are adhering to all this regulation, but that costs money and investment. But it's extremely important. And I imagine the regulatory environment will only get tougher, which is a good thing, because it protects people from fraud and all the other terrible things you hear about. I think the other thing for our industries particularly is any fiscal policy change, or lack of it. So for instance, we await some kind of change in policy that would encourage domestic and foreign investment back into the UK stock market, particularly into the growth stocks, because if that became more tax efficient, then hopefully we can get that market booming again, because it's in decline. But at the moment, it actually looks it's going the other way, and it might be even more heavily taxed, and that certainly isn't going to attract what did attract people to this country, to invest in the companies here. And so those are probably the ones, particularly for my environment, that I worry about the most.
Brilliant. So one of my penultimate question is, if I gave you £100 million to invest in business, what would you do with it?
So in our business, I would become that consolidator that I talked about earlier on. So I think there's a number of wealth management and wealth planning firms out there with between 100 and maybe 500 million in assets under management. And if you put them together, and put them on one platform, have a centralized infrastructure, then you're going to have a much higher margin, profitable business, which is good for shareholders and customers. But also, I think you'd be offering a better service, because you'd definitely be able to do it a lot cheaper than you do right now, because technology particularly would mean that an awful lot of the infrastructure costs would fall the bigger and bigger you get. So for me, that amount of money would take the firm to something like 5 or 6 times its size, over maybe a 3-year period, but it would have a much higher profit margin, and it would definitely be able to offer the same or better service to customers for less money.
Brilliant. And people listening in right now, if they have a business, whether it's the same industry or a different industry, what few tips would you give any business owner to say, this is held me in good stead over the many years?
Yeah, absolutely. Organization. So being organized and putting your organization in into your business. So don't have parts of the business that are inefficient, badly organized, not communicating with one another. So organization on a personal and business level is right up there. I've said it many times in this interview, but people to me is the most important thing. If you lose touch with communicating with your people, or you have the wrong people, you have to do something about it, particularly if you're in a client-facing business. It's the most important thing. I think the competitive landscape, it's so easy these days to take your foot off the throttle in terms of looking at the competitive landscape all the time. And particularly for our industry, people are trying to do the same thing, for more people, for better economics. So you have to keep an eye on that all the time. And the last is risk, really, because if you're going to make risky assumptions or risky changes to business or acquisitions, you've got to look at what those rewards might be. And that goes back to my point about overambition being sometimes the failure of companies, that you think, this is working brilliantly, so I'll up production by 100 times and sell 100 times as much.
Yeah, overstretch.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, it's been absolutely fascinating listening to those nuggets. The time just goes so quickly. Philip, I just want to say thank you very, very much, and wish you all the greatest success going forward as well. And thank you very much for your time.
Andrew, very nice talking to you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.